Welcome to today's explainer. Look, we all hear constantly about environmental impact, sustainability, life cycles, you name it. But here's the thing. The hidden math behind these measurements has a massive secret that researchers are working incredibly hard to fix. If you care about how we accurately measure the true environmental toll of the products we use every single day, well, let's get started. Okay, let's just dive right into this. 50%. Researchers A. Lewandowska and Z. Fultonovich found that when we track environmental impact using traditional methods, we might literally be missing half the picture. Half. Just think about that for a second. We put all this time and effort into calculating environmental impacts, yet our foundational math is leaving a colossal blind spot. So that leads us straight to a pretty massive question. What if half of our environmental data is just missing? How are we supposed to make good sustainability decisions if our baseline math is fundamentally incomplete? To unravel this mystery of our incomplete eco-math, we kind of need to look at how we're doing the measurements right now. Section 1, Measuring our environmental footprints. Let's take a look at Traditional Life Cycle Assessment, or PLCA for short, where the P stands for process. Now, this bottom-up analysis is the gold standard, microscale tool used all over the globe. Basically, it traces a product's environmental toll from the exact moment raw materials are pulled from the earth, all the way down to final disposal. It's incredibly detailed, relying on highly specific data from exact locations and times to scrutinize individual processes. And it is rigorous. It moves through 4 very strict phases: goal and scope definition, life cycle inventory, life cycle impact assessment, and finally, life cycle interpretation. Going through that familiar checklist gives us this really comforting illusion of perfect accuracy, right? But as you're about to see, that feeling of total precision, it's actually a bit of a mirage. Section 2, the truncation error problem. All right, meet the main villain of our environmental math, truncation error. This is the incompleteness that crops up when we completely omit the environmental loads from higher order, upstream processes in a product's supply chain. In plain English, PLCA draws a neat little boundary around a product, but real-world supply chains are infinitely deep. Since scientists obviously can't measure absolutely everything down to the exact environmental impact of the ink inside the pens at the shipping manager's desk, they just have to cut it off. They truncate it. And that forces them to rely on incomplete models. And the fallout from this is absolutely staggering. If an analysis only goes back to the very first order of upstream processes, the truncation error, the missing data, is around 50%. Half of the pie is just gone. We do a beautiful job capturing the immediate processes, sure, but we are completely blind to the massive, complex web of the higher-order supply chain sitting right behind it. So why does this keep happening? Well, it's because PLCA is stuck looking through a microscope at the microscale. To make the map even remotely doable, it has to rely on simplifications and exclusions. Plus, because it's so hyper-focused on specific, localized processes, it totally misses out on the broader socioeconomic mechanisms happening at a national or intersectoral level. And frankly, even when we try to patch it with market-based improvements, it doesn't solve that underlying problem of the system just being fundamentally incomplete. Section 3, the input-output approach. If PLCA is our micro-level problem, it turns out economists might actually have a macro-level answer for us. Enter input-output analysis, or IOA. This is an economic technique that uses sectoral monetary transaction data. So instead of stressing over the physical grams of carbon on a specific factory floor, IOA looks at the economy from a top-down perspective. It maps out that massive, tangled web of inter-industry relationships simply by tracking how money flows between entirely different economic sectors. IOA's absolute superpower in an environmental context is that it covers infinite orders of upstream production stages. That means zero truncation error. It essentially guarantees completeness. IOA allows us to calculate the environmental impact for average products across entire economic sectors, swooping in to capture absolutely everything that our traditional PLCA misses. And this brilliantly illustrates our ultimate dilemma. We are stuck with 2 very different tools here. On one side, we have traditional PLCA. It's bottom-up, it's incredibly detailed, it's micro-scale, but it is severely incomplete. On the flip side, we have input-output analysis. It's top-down, completely accounts for infinite supply chains, and has no truncation error, but it's very general and macro-scale.
It gives us averages, not specifics. Basically, neither method gets the job done on its own.
Section 4. Enter hybrid LCA. So, if you have a highly detailed tool that's incomplete and a fully complete tool that lacks detail, what do? You mash them together to get the best of both worlds. The researchers put it perfectly when they said, the goal of hybrid LCA is to solve the problem of incompleteness and truncation error in PLCA. This is not just some fringe academic idea. Hybrid LCA is widely accepted as the clear path forward for improving life cycle assessments, and it's playing a massive role globally in how this field is evolving right now.
But how exactly do you merge a microscope with a telescope? Well, scientists are actively doing this in two distinct ways. We have the PLCA-based hybrid method, and we have the IO-based hybrid method. Let's quickly break down how these two approaches actually work in practice.
The contrast here is actually pretty fascinating. With the PLCA-based hybrid method, you kick things off just like a traditional assessment. You gather all that highly detailed, nitty-gritty data for an individual product. But the very moment you hit that boundary where truncation error would normally ruin your math, you pull in IOA data to fill in the blank spots. It massively limits the missing pieces by patching a highly detailed model with macro-level data. Now, the IOA-based hybrid method does the exact opposite. It starts with a general top-down IO analysis, and then sharpens it by plugging specific process data columns directly into the IO tables at different levels. It's essentially taking a broad macro model and injecting it with micro details.
And here's the best part. This isn't just a bunch of theory collecting dust in some academic journal. Software that actually runs hybrid LCAs is already available today, built straight out of this latest research. We're seeing a huge spike in publications, dedicated courses, and active software tools built entirely around this concept. Hybrid LCA is literally the future of environmental tracking.
For years, we have been flying with a massive blind spot, missing up to 50% of the supply chain's true impact. But now, by fusing the pinpoint precision of PLCA with the limitless top-down completeness of economic input-output analysis, we actually have a real fix. So, as hybrid LCA rapidly becomes the new global standard, are we finally ready to see our true environmental footprint? It is absolutely going to change how we measure, understand, and ultimately improve the products we rely on every single day. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.